Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming tonight. For those of you who aren't in the Department of Design Media Arts, welcome. I'm really thrilled for the presentation this evening. I prepared a little bit of a text. My name is Casey Reese. I'm a professor in the Department of Design Media Arts. So Matthew and Jesus have worked together since 2001, first at Motion Theory and now at Mirada. Matthew founded Motion Theory at age 23 when he was right out of school in 2000. In December 2010, he teamed up with director Guillermo del Toro, cinematographer Guillermo Navarro, and executive producer Javier Jimenez to launch Mirada. Matthew has directed and produced over 100 commercials and music videos. He won 2 consecutive Grammy Awards for directing Weezer's Pork and Beans and the Black Eyed Peas' Boom Boom Pow. Matthew has been honored with over 100 industry awards, and his work has been inducted into the Museum of Modern Art on a dozen occasions. Jesus is an accomplished director, art director, and photographer. For nearly a decade, he's been an integral creative force in many of Motion Theory and Mirada's best-known projects. His work has been honored by the Art Directors Club, D&AD, the Type Directors Club, and highlighted at MoMA, SIGGRAPH, The One Show, and in Communication Arts, among others. They have hired and worked with many DMA students over the years on projects ranging from music videos to commercials to print campaigns. I think we've had students working with them for at least 7 years. I think it's been a fantastic collaboration over the years. Today they're going to talk about their work on the IBM Think exhibition. I'm excited about this work for a few reasons. One is that a number of DMA students were involved in the work. It was a huge team, over 100 people, would you guys say? Yeah, massive project. So that was David Wicks, Jonathan Cecil, John Houck, Raziz Spell, and Lauren McCarthy were all involved in different ways. But also, I think the reason I'm most excited about the project and in presenting it is it's one of the only projects that I know of that encompasses the entire range of what we do here in design media arts. So things editing from conceptual development to shooting video and editing to 3D modeling to animation to programming to installation work. It's a massive multifaceted project and I think really well represents the capability of this kind of curriculum for bringing about this new emerging kind of multisensory work. So with that, please welcome Matthew and Jesus.
Thank you for having us. By the way, with this project you're going to see, and we're going to talk about, Casey was a really kind of integral part of putting a lot of the most difficult pieces of it together. He worked as a consultant on the project, so I'd like to thank Casey. Thank you. He spoke a little bit about about the company and about the people. One thing I do want to say about the work that we've done over the years, which I think has an interesting connection to UCLA, is really many of, I think, some of the most forward-thinking people that we had that have been a part of our company history have actually come out of this program. We've really kind of pushed to find forward-thinking artists that are really kind of on the edge of technology, have storytelling in their blood, that we've been able to sort of work with and find interesting projects and to push things in new directions. So being here is it's pretty awesome to actually be here and get to speak to you guys tonight, because there's already kind of a legacy that's in the blood of the work that we've done. With that said, this project that we're going to present, we put incredible amounts of blood into this, and I may actually break into tears during parts of this going over, because I haven't. Jesus is actually working on an app project for IBM right now. He's working on a Think app, which kind of encompasses this, and then it'll be on the web so everybody can download the experience. But for me, I haven't seen a lot of this stuff in a while, so and it was a hell of a project to put together. A really remarkable once in a lifetime project. So we're gonna sort of take you through. There's a lot to cover, and I know we have a little bit of time. So we're going to take you through the different aspects of it, and really kind of look forward to answering any of your questions afterwards. So the Think exhibit is the first time since I think 1964 that IBM has had a World's Fair style exhibit. It was Charles and Ray Eames did the first one in '64. And actually, when we got the job, the first thing that we did was we went and visited the Eames Museum and had the grandson kind of take us around and show us the work and humble us. We walked out of there and we're just like, there's no way that we're going to be able to beat this. But when we looked at each other,
to make the pressure even stronger, it was the IBM Centennial last year.
Yeah.
So that's why the whole thing came about.
So it was the project was kind of a celebration of IBM's 100th year in business, and it's pretty remarkable to think that a company that a technology company is 100 years old. But So the pressure of that, for us to really kind of embody that philosophy and an experience that had all these parts was definitely there. But and to be completely honest, when we first got it, we had no idea how we're going to pull it off, because it's we had ideas, but we definitely had fears. But I think with any project, you have fears. You just got to jump in and figure it out. So it launched in in September, and the whole thinking behind the exhibit was that that it embodied this philosophy that IBM was putting forward about making the world better, which essentially we worked with a company that's a kind of a creative think tank for IBM called SY Partners, really remarkable company, and they came up with a philosophy for IBM that was essentially a pattern of progress. And without getting too much into it, and you'll see in the film, it was a 5-step process that that human beings have always gone about to make the world better. Seeing, mapping, understanding, believing, and acting. And so this whole project was a film that took place across 3 different formats to communicate this philosophy, communicate IBM's philosophy to the world. So, looking at it, the whole experience of the film, and the idea of the film for us was to do something that was different, not do something that was just necessarily linear, but to create a whole storytelling experience based around this philosophy of IBM. And as you could see with this sort of introduction to it, it had 3 pieces. One was a 125-foot data visualization wall that took you down into the space. Once you went into the space, it's essentially a room that we brought a model for it here, which is a long room that had 40 columns that were 8 feet high, 4.5 to 5 feet wide, that were basically, they're all oriented in a specific, with specific angles in these pods, and then there's mirrors on the side, and so the film completely takes place around you. So it's a dimensional film, which we'll show. It's hard to imagine it because it's actually spatially it takes place completely around you. And then the third aspect was that every single one of those screens, once you finish the film, they break down into the 5 tenets of this IBM philosophy, and each, so there's 5 interactive screens, and each one of those interactives has its own experience, and So it's a pretty massive undertaking to, bring all those elements, together. But I mean, incredible opportunity to be able to tell a story in a, completely different way. And we're responsible for this project. We basically were in charge of the directing, the design, and the production of, all pieces of content. So anything that, anything sort of visual within the exhibit, is ultimately our responsibility to shoot, to program, you name it, edit, do the music, every single aspects of the production.
Yes, so just to start, and we're taking you guys on the journey of the experience as close as we can, the same way that you would experience it in New York City. So when you came to this, the corner of Lincoln Center where the exhibit was installed, you were confronted with this database wall. It was kind of like the thing that would interact with people first. And it was an amazing sight just to have it just by the sheer size of it, 12 feet high and 120 feet long. And the idea was that as you were learning about the exhibit, you might have heard about it, but as you're preparing yourself to go into the exhibit space and see the film, this wall not only is giving you the context, but it's also giving you real-time specific information about your surroundings. And there were 5. This is as you can see here, where the Think logo is. That was the entrance to the theater, to the exhibit space. So as you're going down, there's a time lapse. You would be seeing these 5 data visualization stories that are telling you. With real-time data, streaming real-time data, they're telling you stories about your surroundings.
What was
Oh, sorry, I was going to just play it again so you guys can see. This is just time-lapse happening really quickly, but there's 5 moments here. One was about water consumption, another one was about air quality, another one was about solar energy potential, another one was about traffic, and the last one was about commerce. And we can talk about the details later of each one. Sorry, what were you going to say?
What was interesting about it was that it literally is like right next to the subway at Lincoln Center. So you have, people that are coming out of the subway and, they would just stop, and the way that it was designed was we essentially wanted to kind of pull people in with just the beauty of it. And then as people were sort of captivated by it, then they would look and they realized that this is actually my city, and so so from a storytelling perspective, we were personalizing the experience, one, drawing them in, and just something was beautiful by itself. 2, that they realized, okay, wow, this is the air quality that's here in this spot that I'm at, and it's a lot worse than it should be, then you would do analysis where you would show the other boroughs and they'd be able to compare what their air quality. So it really personalized, what this information was, and actually no IBM logos on this at all. It was just, purely put out there. And I mean, and you would get the people to come up and look at it. You could imagine like New York wildlife. I mean, you'd have, everybody from, like a homeless person that would just be there staring at it for hours.
During Fashion Week.
Yeah, and it was during Fashion Week too, to people that were really compelled by it, children, it worked very well. And we just got some kind of analysis from IBM on the success of the exhibit, and it had, I think, a 95% approval rating for everybody that went to go see it. And the number one thing that drew people into the exhibit was the wall. I think they polled people, and I think it was like 30% was like news coverage, and 60% was, or 50% was the wall. And then, it was kind of split up between like friends and, and things like that. But it was really interesting to me because it was like here was this very public kind of art meets science, installation, and it was the thing that drew people in to see the exhibit more than anything. So here's we're going to show you the Think film. This kind of gives you a little bit more sense of what the space looked like. So this would be if you were looking, essentially you were in the center of a pod, looking in one direction. But there's mirrors off to the side, left and right. I'm going to go and unfortunately I'm going to lose my voice, but I'll project. With the space, there's actually quite a bit of content that we had to get. So what you see here is where people would essentially address the screens 3 or 3, or they would stand here or here. But there were mirrors all along the edges, and there's screens on the outside. And so what that does is it allows us to use these screens to also expand the story. And so what we would do, we shoot content specifically for these screens that are on the side. So really, when it came down to it, I mean, it was just, when it came down to it, we're looking at it, ultimately what we shot more than a feature film, to make this film that we're going to show you now. And what you see here is actually only 3 screens. So imagine it was, in actuality, 10 screens, right?
20.
No,
you
10 screens of original content.
10 of content.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, we've sought to improve the way we live. For centuries, we've worked to make our world more efficient, productive, accessible, and safe. We've sought to make our world work better. While each leap of progress has required its own intelligence and hard work, many seem to follow a distinct pattern. Think about how we came to explore space. At first, we observed with only our eyes. Then we invented tools to see farther, deeper, and with greater detail. But seeing with greater acuity wasn't enough. So we created maps. Mapping revealed relative position, scale, relationships, patterns. Over time, we came to understand the dynamic relationships of the celestial bodies, the rules, principles, and laws that govern our solar system. Seeing, mapping, and understanding culminated in a powerful force: belief.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Our shared belief spurred us to action and emboldened us to redefine what is possible. This is the pattern of progress. seeing how our world behaves, mapping what we find, understanding causes and effects, believing we can create new outcomes, and acting to design, build, and improve the systems around us. Today, we can follow the very same path. Aided by deeper science and technology, we can address some of our most pressing challenges, from the way we heal, to the way we move people and goods, to the way we feed our nations.
Rice feeds half of the world every day. But this commodity is highly susceptible to disease, drought, and pests. Which is why, as populations grow, many nations' food security is at stake. For centuries, we have attempted to breed more resilient crops. But now we can make advancements faster. One approach is to see rice as it has never been seen before, as genetic code. Every grain of rice has within it the capability to be more resilient. The challenge is to find that capability. For 7 years, a consortium of scientists from Asia, Europe, and the Americas took on that task and mapped the entire rice genome. By exploring this map, we're identifying which genes allow rice to resist drought and disease. And by using advanced computation, we are speeding these discoveries, which allows us to more precisely breed resilient rice and put it into the field faster to safeguard our food supply.
For decades, increasingly more sensitive and capable instruments have allowed us to see every heartbeat, every cell, every biological change as a data point. But only now do we have the ability to map this vast data into a more comprehensive picture. To see beyond even the complex systems of an individual. To map the patterns across entire populations. To compare these patterns with your data, factoring in genetic makeup, environment, and medical history to understand what makes you sick. Researchers and doctors are beginning to personalize medical care, from treatments customized to your genetic makeup, to dosages tailored to your biological traits, to regimens suited to your individual metabolism. It's the foundation of smarter medicine.
Every day, people and goods must travel from point A to point B. But a significant problem stands in the way. It's hard to think of traffic as anything other than an unsolvable problem. But what if we looked at it in an entirely different way? What if we saw traffic as data? Today, in Stockholm, Singapore, and Brisbane, intricate networks of sensors monitor traffic in real time. We can see the temperature of the road, the condition of bridges, the type, speed, and position of vehicles, even the cargo they're carrying. This data can be organized into dynamic maps that reveal a system-wide view of causes and effects. And models can help us understand why traffic forms in the first place and predict how it will evolve. This allows us to take action and dynamically control transportation systems, changing the timing of traffic lights, coordinating emergency crews, and adjusting the price of tolls and parking. The systems of our world are complex, constantly changing, and ever-evolving. Approaches like these are enabling us to take actions as conditions emerge to make our systems flow better.
This is the pattern of progress, an approach to tackling challenges from the grand to the everyday. Today we can see more clearly than ever how our world behaves in real time as life is unfolding, from the infinitesimally small to the infinitely large. We map our findings more accurately and completely. We understand cause and effect in increasingly complex systems. The systems that support our businesses, our industries, our cities, and our economies. Today we can improve the infrastructures and processes that we most depend on. We have more tools, more technology, more science at our disposal than ever before. So what belief can we now build? Which actions must we take? How will we make the world work better?
I want to sigh when I see that. Thank you. So I'd say probably maybe like 95% of the shots in there, everything was shot by us. The only things we couldn't shoot, I think, were like the shuttle launch and, a few of the, just a few kind of key little stock pieces of footage. But everything else, we essentially traveled, I think, 12 countries around the world over a 2 to 3 month period, capturing everything in there. And also just another note, interesting collaborator on this was the guy that did the music his name is Money Mark from the Beastie Boys. So it's instead of doing maybe kind of a more kind of classical approach to the way that we wanted to to approach the music, we really wanted to bring somebody that was, I think, a lot more contemporary, and he did a really remarkable job on it. Just a few kind of details in the film. This particular scene, we actually replicated the Apollo landing to like the minute details. We had some people on the team that were just NASA junkies, and the opportunity to sort of actually show what it looked like and what the footprints look like. And actually in the film you actually see the moon dust sort of moving at the bottom of the feet. And if you look in the helmet, you actually see, is that Buzz or Neil? Like, is the reflection? So yeah, the reflection is supposed to be Neil, but since the orientation of these of the columns is inward, what's interesting is where you stand, it's really the reflection is supposed to be you. So there's a lot of kind of like metaphorical things that we have going on in this, but. What's cool about it is this replication of the moon happens in true perspective to the columns, 360 degrees around you. So, I can't think of an instance. We essentially wanted to kind of create a sort of a moon landing experience, or what is it like to be on the moon, as closely as we possibly could. 360 degrees in proper perspective. This for Powers of 10 and Eames fans, this is a little nod to to their legacy, to honor them in the film, and we actually replicated the Powers of 10 moment in the exact same park as closely as we possibly could to where that location would have taken place, but today. So we cast some people that were in the kind of general area, but really kind of went in and you know, tried to get a lot of the details, you know, of the magazines and, you know, replicated it. And it's funny, I was at, Eames Dimitri, who's the grandson, we were talking about this, and he's like, oh, you know what, yeah, there's this guy here, you got to meet him. He actually was there when they were doing it. And I brought him over and I told him the story, and he's like, yeah, they never went to that park. So, and it was hilarious. It was, you know, like, I mean, it was essentially done. The funny thing is, it was that park, and they did it in post-production, you know, and whatever the post-production was at the time. And we would have, you know, nowadays, the traditional or the way that people would do things, you just do it in post-production, you know, and never go there. But we actually went there to do it. Yeah, it was like, that's how kind of serious I think we were taking, you know, the whole project. Just in terms of data visualization, because there's 3 stories, we wanted each story to be expressed a little bit differently. And I think a great challenge with data visualization, you know, we've done you know, our fair share of data viz work, you know, mixed with film, is how do you bring out the humanity? How do you make it, you know, like more accessible? And so we wanted in each one of the stories to do something a little different. So with the traffic stories, and what you see with this traffic story, this is Bangkok, but we also shot Istanbul. So on the opposite columns, the opposite 3 columns is Istanbul. Matching cuts, matching perspectives. This was sort of, you know, we wanted, because traffic is one of those problems that seems like it's completely unsolvable, we wanted to put it down to like, how can we completely simplify it? And the simplest way was just to represent things by dots and shapes, you know, squares, dots, triangles, you know, the language of the road. And so when you strip things away, it became a much more simpler thing. And this was actually kind of we got to put, I mean, it's a dream project because we got to put all of our homages in it. Like, this is my homage to the dot and the line. So, and actually with the animation, you know, in the whole room, because the side columns that are reflected in the mirrors don't repeat, they're completely fresh animations. Like, you'd basically be transported in the middle of like what it feel like to be in traffic, you know, but everything's represented in this very graphic simplicity. With the medical stories, we wanted to really capture the beauty of what's in the human body, but do it in a little bit more scientific way. And so, you know, the approach was a little bit different with this. You know, it was still very scientific, very beautiful, but we wanted there to be much more complexity to it. Much more organic, much more, you know, like a, you know, sort of living form. And then, you know, it actually used like the graphic lines to make connections between people. And because of the you know, the resolution of the screens that we actually had, I mean, you could see I think there were like the lines are maybe like a pixel or pixel and a half, and they were just so beautiful. So, I mean, it looked like you drew them with a pencil. And they also kind of obeyed the perspective of the room. And then the third thing was the rice story, and the rice story was really about you know, the rice genome, and what we wanted to do was really kind of show how the abundance of code. So we actually put the exact rice genome, we coded it, and put it across the room. And I mean, the letters were like this big, and I think what we had was like 1% of 1%. Like, yeah. Imagine this, but across 40 columns, and it was only like a small percentage of the rice genome, you know, the whole sequence. A tiny little fraction. Yeah. You know, but it was each one of the stories we wanted to sort of say something a little bit different that, you know, that connected with whatever the specific issues were. Just a couple cool details about the project is we actually developed a special camera rig. Guillermo Navarro, who's a partner of the company, and won the Academy Award for Pan's Labyrinth. We designed a camera rig he called La Medusa. And it essentially was 3 vertically mounted red cameras, and it matches the exact perspectives of the columns. And so when we would shoot traffic, as you can sort of see in the bottom left-hand corner, we were actually seeing what was taking place in the street around us. So if somebody walked by, those 3 cameras, you would see it in the room exactly the way that it looked. And it was shot, I think, with 24 millimeter lenses, 4 feet off the ground, so that it maintained true human perspective, as closely as it can. So when you see things in the film, like people, they're actually your size. And also when you're on the street, or in cases where it's sort of a one-to-one, we really wanted to have this sort of sense for people that were going in that these were sort of doorways to these other places, that this is real life. This isn't like, that was a kind of luxury that we had with the screen size, was that this could be something that could be all-encompassing, it could be at human scale, and ultimately from a storytelling perspective, it really grounds you, in, much more deeply into the experience. This kind of gives you a little bit of sense, and it was interesting, the behavior of people in the, as they were watching the film. A lot of people, we didn't think about it, but people sat down. It was actually interesting because as we we surrounded people with a story. Traditionally, we all address stories the way that you're seeing the screen right now. So you sit there, you watch it. It's a little bit more passive, or the way that we might look at our iPad or a television. But what's interesting about a project like this is it was an experiment in how people can experience a story. And so what was interesting is that people looked all around, so people they didn't know how quite to address the space, and they'd sit down, they would stand, but ultimately what it did is really engage them to completely look around. And we liked that because it was a much more active, engaging experience, because, the title of this whole thing is Think. So we wanted to sort of have people already in a sort of mode of active participation going into the experience.
No, and I just wanted to say that it was also a nice surprise that when we got to see people experiencing it, as we were still there right after the installation, that different kinds of people reacted in many different ways to the space and to the experience. And you would get to see, like people from IBM that were geeking out because some of the programs that they might be working on are reflected on the film, and they're like totally immersed into it. And at the same time, you see their kids like flying and faking like they're flying when we're on the space scene. So it really engaged people in all different ages and all different backgrounds, and that was a very neat surprise.
Yeah.
That we got to see. Shall we keep going?
There's a lot to go over.
Yeah. And then the last part, right after the film, you were invited to stay in that room. The lights would come up, and because the film was intended to be this inspiring moment that communicates the idea, this pattern of progress that they came up with. And you were invited to stay there. The screens would turn into interactive touch screens. And each one of them, they were divided in 5 groups, but each one of them had more information about subjects that the film had just like touched upon, like very, very briefly, or more about reinforcing this idea of this pattern of progress, the idea of seeing, mapping, understanding, believing, and acting. And each one, you'll if you're interested, soon there will be, like Matthew mentioned earlier, there will be this app that you can check out and you can learn more about it. They've also published a book. But the idea is that, we experience the world. The seeing part is how we experience the world. And in the seeing part, for example, we had this illustration that you could actually interact with a little bit better than here. But each one of these blue color items is the first time that humans got to see something. And this is a timeline through history, from you know, from the first solar clock, the first solar device, to modern magnetic resonance, or modern even projects that are still not fully realized, that are slated to come up in the years to come. So from the first time that humans got to see a fetus, for the first time that someone took a picture of the moon, the first photograph in which a human being is represented. Through history, you see all these moments.
And I would say, what we try to do with this is actually with IBM, strategically, we also wanted to make sure that they had style. That the experience of this project didn't sort of drown out in being something that was absolutely boredom, but something where we really brought people like Money Mark in. This is an incredible artist named Josh Cochran, who did this really beautiful timeline. And when you get into the minutia, I mean, there's people like breakdancing, and there's all these just wonderful little like details that I think were really, when we looked at IBM's legacy, the heyday of their design was when they had more of a sense of humor. So we wanted to make sure we instilled that in this project as well, which is important to balance out a lot of the sort of science aspects.
Yeah. And
I believe.
So now, just briefly going through all the other sections, mapping. The concept for mapping was that with this information that we've seen, once we've seen, we start making sense of the world, and we create maps in order to do that. And maps are, which was something beautiful about the exhibit, is that you had 10 juxtaposition of maps, some of them that you would traditionally call a map, and some others that you would definitely not. Like, for example, an Excel data sheet, or software applications, or diagrams, or even the organizational chart of a company. So the idea is that once you start making these connections, you organize the information around you. The next step is understanding, and understanding was, again, once you have all this data, you've mapped it around, you have it spread around you, then you can dig in and make sense of the world. And the way understanding the information, the content in the exhibit, the way it was organized, it was also juxtapositions between the old method, or the traditional method of doing things, which is experiential, and then the new possibilities that technology allows you to not to have to experience things to understand them, which is, for example, complex modeling, or modeling of complex systems. So you would have, for example, one of the stories is that it's called "Will This Plane Fly?" You would see an image of an old airplane crashing, which was the old way of, finding out if your plane is going to fly. It's just actually climbing onto it and see if it actually flies. But now we can, with the use of technology and through seeing and mapping, we can create computer models that do the work for us. Then the fourth part, sorry, that was called believing. The fourth part, it was actually really interesting, because or at least I didn't get it quite at the beginning when they came to us with the project, but it was one of the most inspiring ones, because it really takes belief. Once you've had all this knowledge, once you've developed theories, it really takes belief to put these theories in practice. And there's a bunch. We had 9 out of many possibles. We had to limit it in time, but we had 9 really, really inspiring people that are working in projects that are actually changing the world. And we can show you a couple of them right now.
Yeah, I would say and we these are interviews that we did, and we also shot them at human scale. So when they sit and talk to you, they're looking you right in the eye. And actually the belief was it's not like having kind of a spirituality, or God, I know I can do it. When you get into the language of belief, it's actually what's fascinating. When we interviewed all these world leaders, you know, in compelling people. It was belief is getting people around you to get behind your ideas. So that could be your colleagues, it could be your boss, it could be a politician, it could be a bank, you know, with financing, but it's not about like it being kind of abstract, but it's about actually taking information and saying, you know, like we know, like this is the solution, and getting to people to believe in actually funding it, you know, which is very different. It's not an ethereal idea, but I mean, really the key component to you know, to any project. I mean, how many great ideas do we have? How many things do we put forward, and then we can't get people around us to believe in actually, you know, putting the money towards it. You know, it's you know, probably the most important ingredient.
We're seeing, again,
I believe passionately that the visual arts are one of the most potent ways of communicating ideas and beliefs to other people in a way that is engaging and that breaks down barriers, social, intellectual, psychological. You know, one of the things that I find so thrilling about being involved with a museum, especially a museum dedicated to modern and contemporary art, is that we're actually fundamentally about change. We don't seek the status quo. We actually seek to be in a perpetual state of disruption. You have to realize that most people are going to be very uncomfortable with change because we actually crave, generally, something stable, something that we can depend on, a routine, a set of rules and regulations by which we can organize ourselves. And I think you have to be very gentle but persuasive in encouraging people to feel uncomfortable. The way we approach risk is to think about it a lot, to try a lot of different things, and to be absolutely brutal about killing the ones that aren't working. So in a way, we want an environment, we want to create an environment that says if you have an idea that's interesting, or if you have a belief in an artist that's passionate, try it out. Let's see what happens. At the end of the day, you have to really work at creating a culture that says it's great to try something new. We as an institution, we as individuals never want to be the same. And if you can make that part of the DNA of a place, then you have a very dynamic institution indeed.
When I was being trained in the mid-1970s, cancer therapeutics were very limited. And part of what took me to the City of Hope was that I had just finished rotating on a leukemia service where every single one of the patients that I had been taking care of over the course of the year had passed away. And in those days, when we started, we were one of 6 programs around the United States who began this quest to try to cure leukemia. And that led to work to try to cure other diseases too. But we did 6 transplants in that first year. And now we do approximately 500 transplants a year at the City of Hope, nearly exclusively in people who have cancers of the bone marrow and immune system. At the end of the day, it's not what I think is true, it's what I can prove to be true. And the type of data we use are often experiments in the laboratory with cells or molecules, and how they interact. That's data. Lives are data. Cells are data. And we work in different types of data, but at the end of the day, it all focuses on, can we change what's going on in a person? I believe that it's possible to cure cancer. I have seen that belief translate into reality based on the work that many people have done to take people who are incurable and cure them. And because we've accomplished that in certain types of patients with certain types of therapies, my belief is that we can find it for everyone.
Pretty awesome.
So this just to give you a little sense of what was happening behind the scenes. You know, this is over at Mirada on our stage. You could see sort of us testing the columns, and you know,
that person you see there in the chair on the back is around here too, Andy Merkin.
Yeah, Andy Merkin was the project manager on this, with Mirada on this.
And I think that other silhouette in front of the screen is also here. I think that's you, Jonathan, right? Yeah, there was this part, especially the database wall, was fully UCLA Design Media Arts. You guys did an awesome job. Rasis is here today with us, Jonathan, but also John and David Weeks. Yeah. Oh, there he is. This is actually, it's a great image because it shows you, this is just 10 feet of this database wall. It's full height, is the 12 feet high, but this is just 10 feet of the whole length of the wall, the 120.
This particular one was beautiful because it was actually, this is LiDAR data of Manhattan that we actually needed to go through like Homeland Security to get the data. I mean, it took probably like, I don't know, 3-4 months to be able to access it because it was that sensitive, because it had so much detail in it. And the power that it took just to power this wall, we actually needed to bring in, you know, and double the power that we had at the facility. This wall basically was the equivalent electricity to the other 150 computers that we have at the facility, plus everything else. Gives you a sense, you know, of how much, you know, because it needs to be visible in broad daylight.
And even with that just this piece needed all that much power. When it was fully installed in New York, it was generating so much heat in that narrow passage that you guys saw in the pictures before that they had to bring in extra cooling systems because people couldn't get close enough to it. It was just like generating too much heat. It's unbelievable, but a wonderful part of the project. I love this part because it really, you know, and again, you know, kudos to the program here because this obviously with Casey's guidance, but it really represented the idea of communication and design applied to a medium to the full extent of the medium, but without trying to pretend something that the medium is not. And one of the great things about it is like, you know, every pixel ended up in the way they developed the work. Every pixel, every one of these LED lights ended up having a meaning. You know, there was no wasted space. Everything was data, and the data was represented one-to-one. So it was just a fantastic project. And not only, like Matthew was talking about before, the fact that it's giving you information in real time. Like on the outside of the exhibit, they installed one air quality cabin, the same type that they have throughout the whole city of New York. So we were capturing air quality right there, but on top of the building, we had sensors that were measuring the solar exposure of that rooftop and putting it in the context of this with LiDAR data. We had a projection of the solar potential of all the rooftops in Manhattan, but we also had our own sensor on top of the building that was telling us what was the potential of that building. And then same thing with the traffic cameras that were capturing traffic in real time in the intersection. So it was just like so connected to you. It was just fantastic.
And it was interesting being able to translate that data into, I think, visualizations that we're working on an emotional level. Like this, you know, this just being this, you know, is really beautiful visualization of heat. And it starts out in a way where you actually, you're sort of as if you were you know, across the river looking at Manhattan, but you don't know it's Manhattan. All you just see is orange rising, you know, so just beautiful lines. And then it starts to turn, and it isn't until you're almost bird's eye that you realize that you're actually looking at New York. And so for people, it became this kind of very emotional, I think, you know, when they realized that this was their city. And then they'd walk up to it, they'd try to figure where where specifically they lived, and they would look at the key, you know, determine what the solar power potential was of where they lived. I mean, it was kind of abstract, but you know, it still people engaged it, you know, in that kind of way. And then there were things like the traffic visualization that it was just blocks. It's very, very simple, and we used the metaphor of a knot, to represent, negative traffic flow or positive traffic flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, very quickly going through all of the stories here, recycling one after the next. In real time, it was about 20 minutes for each one of it.
Yeah, I'm glad it's over. It was really a remarkable job because it was one of these rare jobs where you're able to bring together, pretty much everything as a filmmaker, as an artist, as a technician, into a unique experience. And it's one of those sort of rare things that these types of jobs don't. We realized that when we were actually shooting it, that this is sort of a once-in-a-lifetime job. But I actually don't feel that way anymore. Just the way that the business is changing, we're actually starting to see a lot more projects like this come forward, where advertisers, where brands, where studios, where they're looking for ways to be able to reach the public, in a way that is more participatory, rather than being passive. And so I think, in terms of what's possible or the direction of the business, I mean, I think we're really just scratching the surface. So it's sort of, exciting for all those people that want to be kind of infusing all these art forms into something different. For us, a project like this is really living the credo of, I think, the type of storytelling that, we want to bring to life. So we'd love to answer any questions that you have. We'll also invite Andy up here, Andy Merkin, to answer questions with us. One of the kind of key people behind the scenes, actually, ironically, probably at certain points during this job, he was literally like keeping this whole project from collapsing. He had the duct tape at critical moments. So yeah, we'd love to answer questions.
Any questions. Thank you, guys. Because you are the one who knows. Yeah.
Questions. Make sure you speak into the mic, and Lucas will be around.
Great work. I've got a question on the rice sequence. What software were you using? Was that After Effects or?
No, it actually, that's a good question. It was done in Houdini, we actually use Houdini's a regular part of our sort of how we are bringing a lot more of these complex things to life. Just because you'd never be able to animate, it has to all be coded. Especially when you're talking about that much data. And so doing it in Houdini, allowed us to do, changes like that. I literally come in, I would see, an animation, and I would be able to give them notes that completely changed everything, and I would have it the next day, because they did all of the upfront work on it. So it allowed pretty incredible, iterations. Yeah.
Breathtaking work, honestly. But I'm dying to see this piece, this installation in person. Breathtaking work. I'm dying to see this installation in person. Any opportunity or chance that this installation is going to be around again?
It's it doesn't seem likely that it's going to be installed the same way it was, but we do know that they have in the plans to do limited versions or limited size versions of it, because they've kept all the material, they've kept the wall, they kept the screens and everything. Everything is set up and ready to go. It's just probably a question of space. But we know that they're trying to figure out a way to implement it in, like, conventions or an airport, or places where it could be maybe a smaller version of it. We'll see.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you got this piece of news, but it's probably going to be at Epcot Center. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, IBM has a collaboration, with Disney, and so they may be putting it at Epcot Center, which is. So we're going to have to, instead of Buzz, it's going to be Mickey Mouse on the moon. But I think when I think about it, though, it's interesting because at least it puts it in a way where I think a lot more people will be able to access it, and if there's a relationship that can have it there for for the long term, I think it could be very beneficial.
I'm taking a data visualization class right now with my teacher behind me, actually. And one of our biggest problems was kind of coming up with this grand strategy and how to take it from this sort of idea in the air to actually coming into fruition with tactics. Because you guys obviously have completed your work, and your tactics are through coded digital visualizations, but how did you sort of come up with oh, we're gonna have 3 stories, and each story is gonna delve into these different perspectives, or is that given to you?
The solution to your problem is research. It's all in the research, and there's many more parts to it. I'm sure Casey and the guys that worked on it, they can give you a lot of awesome feedback, but it's in the content, and in the more you know about the subject, or the more you know about the story that you want to tell, the more that it presents itself. It actually tells itself almost sometimes. Yeah, it tells you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's voice. There's whatever the story is, there's a voice, that makes it accessible. Yeah. I think it's just a matter of sort of finding a way, that data visualization could be, relatable to people. I think what's exciting to me is actually pushing data visualization, beyond pushing it into sort of new spaces, beyond the things that we're sort of used to seeing, because I think that's where, there's definitely a lot more possibility. Yeah.
So given the broadness of the jobs that you guys do, and how do you guys keep your staff? How do you keep projects? Do you have a large amount of staff that just comes in for one job and then goes away, or how can you have all these different experts and maintain and sustain?
We're going to ask the EP over there, Javier Jimenez, UCLA alumni. It's actually, I think the key, what we try to have is really high-level creatives, that I think come from a variety of different perspectives, and in key managers in each department. We have a pretty amazing staff, that I think that covers the whole broad spectrum of everything that we do. But in cases, we have a huge freelance group that's a part of our community that that we call in depending on the assignment, and then of course just specialists, people that are at the top of their field that we bring in as consultants, to help specific projects. Because it's a good question, because I think, every job's different, right?
And a lot of it is just the attitude that the staff do have. You know, when we never know what's around the corner, so you have to be always excited to learn something new. So it really, the people that say, "Oh, I'm an expert in this and only this," don't survive very long because they're not useful when that next corner turns. And to kind of go back to your question too about working on the data viz, it's a lot of it's just weekends. You know, we worked nonstop for a very, very long time on this, and it just became part of our soul. You know, we could pull up. I can still pull up statistics of how many pixels are on that data viz wall, you know, that are completely useless from now on. But it's part of us, and we lived it so long and so hard that when the next thing comes around, we know the amount of effort that needs to be put into it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also good to have a diverse range of talents. You know, like I think some of the most valuable people that are part of our studio will be incredible at something, but then they have a bunch of other things that they do. You know, like, so it's like if you don't have if like this, what you're best at, you don't have a specific need on that day, then you can contribute in all these other ways. So I think it's good to have, I think it. Like art, contemporary artists, like filmmakers, storytellers, you need to have kind of your hands in, as many things as you possibly can. That doesn't mean you're like spread thin, but you should definitely have something that that you're better than everybody else at, or you're really good at. But it just allows you to have a more malleability. I think for our studio, our philosophy is that we just want to be, we're a malleable company, so we try to be. Have a diverse range of talents to be able to take on whatever the challenge is.
No pressure. No pressure.
I'm blown away by this piece.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, you said in this frame in particular, you took creative license at reconstructing this in a certain way. So when you're dealing with real data or presenting things as facts on the one hand, and you're mixing kind of like speculative fiction in another, how do you kind of balance, what are your parameters to say, well, we can kind of get expressive over here, and over here we're totally truthful and factual. So I'm just curious how that kind of plays out.
Sure. Go for it. No, I was just going to say briefly that you have to be expressive while being absolutely truthful, especially in a project like this. Because something that, we haven't mentioned enough, but, we worked on it for almost a year, like heavily for 9 months. But the company that we worked for, or we partnered with, SY Partners, they had been working for another year before that on this project, just creating the concept and coming up with the content and researching all the science. So everything is really, and especially in a project like this, that you're dealing with a company like IBM, where their scientists have created some of these milestones that we've seen here through history. You have to be absolutely factual. And then the creative license comes in the way you tell the story, in the way you try to make it engaging, so it communicates more than just the data. It communicates also from the emotional point of view.
Yeah, and we're definitely under a microscope. Yeah. Every single thing that we put up there was being scrutinized, needed to be fact-checked over and over again. Even with the landing, of course we're replicating it, but all of it, based on like a ton of historical photos. The people that worked on it were like NASA junkies, Jesus included, so it was important for them to be as accurate as they could within the restraints of what it was, but. With the data viz stories, like medicine, there's footnotes, which I thought was interesting. There's all these little footnotes that actually go into exactly what it is, when it was invented, The data viz that's flowing through their body, I mean, it's not factual, data that's flowing through their body, but, we actually did, like model their forms. We, based on what it was, the specific tool that we were talking about, or the scan, or whatever it may be, we were actually like feeding the data viz through those specific organs in the body. I mean, so it did, as Jesus said, it was, we tried to be as completely factual as we could in the places that I think were maybe, were sort of in that area of being entertainment, as well. I mean, it's a very fine line, but all the equations at the end, like that you saw when the film wraps up, like those are real occasions. And actually, on our soft premiere night, we had like one of the simplest equations was wrong, and the people at IBM were freaking out because they thought one of their scientists was gonna spot one of the simplest equations, and luckily they didn't. So it was very much it was under the microscope, and we really tried to hold ourselves to that standard.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome work, man. Good job.
This presentation.
Thank you, dude. Yeah, we can let's